People can be so sloppy. I mean, they leave their stuff lying around everywhere. Do you know how many umbrellas get left behind on London Underground trains? Actually, it's around 80,000 every single year. That's one seriously forgetful bunch. But umbrellas are just the beginning. Today, we're uncovering all sorts of jaw-dropping treasures that turned up in the backs of closets or sat collecting dust in old sheds. Here are 15 fortunes and treasures found in abandoned places. Number 15, $1 million baseball card haul in Detroit. In 2015, some lucky urban explorers in Detroit walked into an abandoned warehouse and found stacks upon stacks of unopened sports card boxes, towering piles of untouched inventory from the 1980s and 90s. Baseball, basketball, and football, names like Jordan, Griffey Jr., and Shaq were scattered across the packaging. The tabloids called it a $1 million treasure, but here's the twist. While there were millions of cards, they weren't rare, just endless reprints, surplus from a company that likely shut down post-90s sports card bubble. Still, the visual of all those unopened packs, just sitting in silence while the world moved on outside, hit hard. For collectors, it was nostalgic gold. For investors, not so much. The building itself was falling apart, like most of post-recession Detroit, and the find felt more like a time capsule than a payday. In the end, the explorers took some shots, grabbed a few packs, and left the rest to gather dust. Well, as a wise man once said, not every treasure is valuable, but some are just unforgettable. Number 14. Ring with Charlotte Bronte sits hair. Most people on Antiques Roadshow leave with nothing but polite rejection. But one woman from Wales brought in a ring that stunned the experts. It was just a silver piece, dated and inscribed, but when opened, it revealed a hidden compartment containing a small braided lock of hair. That wasn't just any hair. It belonged to Charlotte Bronte, the literary icon behind Jane Eyre. The ring had been created after her death as a mourning keepsake, common in the Victorian era, when hair jewelry was more meaningful than strange. The expert confirmed its authenticity, tracing it through family records and inscriptions. Its value, £25,000. Not because of the silver, but because of the story and legacy tangled up in that one curl of hair. This wasn't just a trinket tucked away in an attic. It was a direct connection to one of English literature's most revered voices. Some heirlooms hold gold, others hold history. This one had both in one fragile human strand. Number 13. The $1.50 million blanket. During one of the roughest chapters of Laurent Kritzer's life, he made a discovery that flipped everything. After a car crash wrecked his body, career, and left him with an amputated foot, he was barely surviving in a rundown shack in Leona Valley, California, living off a few $100 a month. One evening, while watching Antiques Roadshow, he saw a man bring in a rare Navajo blanket valued at nearly $500,000. Something clicked. Kritzer remembered an old blanket, handed down in his family, stuffed in his closet. Curious, he pulled it out and compared it. It looked nearly identical. He figured it might fetch a few thousand, if lucky. His family wasn't convinced, and neither were most antique dealers. But one auctioneer knew better. The blanket turned out to be a first-phase Navajo chief's blanket, extremely rare. It sold for $1.5 million. Laurent bought a house, a Dodge Challenger SRT-8, and went from broke to legendary overnight. Number 12. The treasure chest hidden in the Rockies. Forrest Fenn, a retired art dealer with a love for mystery, said he'd hidden a chest full of gold in the Rocky Mountains. In his memoir, The Thrill of the Chase, he left behind a cryptic poem meant to lead treasure hunters to it. Thousands searched. One of them, Jonathan Jack Stoof, a medical student from Michigan, found it. At least, that's how the story goes. Some believed Stoof had used more than clues to track it down. Accusations of email hacking and digital trickery followed. He denied using GPS or any modern help. Still, the hunt had lasted a full decade, and not everyone was ready to believe it ended clean. The chest allegedly held over $1 million worth of gold, jewels, and rare coins, all tucked into a simple bronze box. For Fenn, the chaos and competition were part of the fun. He knew exactly what he was stirring up. In the end, someone walked away with treasure and a crowd of doubters was still talking. Number 11. Lost hockey puck found 70 years later. Ray was 88 when he wandered into the woods near his home, searching for a sturdy branch to carve into a cane. This was part of his routine. Nothing unusual. But then he spotted something stuck in the mud, round, worn, and familiar. It wasn't a rock or a soda can, it was his childhood hockey puck, the one he lost nearly 70 years ago. Scratched into its surface were his initials, faded, but unmistakable. The odds of stumbling across that same puck after all those decades felt impossible. Most of his childhood friends had already passed, and there was no one left to share the memory with. So, Ray did what anyone would in his place. He posted it online. A single puck in a forest, untouched for decades, was all it took to bring a little light to his day. It didn't make him rich, it didn't change the world, but for Ray, it brought back a moment that no one else could ever recreate. Number 10. 1400. Year-old gold at Temple Mount. In summer 2013, excavations at the foot of the Temple Mount, Hebrew University of Jerusalem archaeologist Dr. Eilat Mazar made a stunning discovery: 2 bundles of treasure containing 36 gold coins, gold and silver jewelry, and a gold medallion with the menorah symbol etched into it. These symbols made it clear this wasn't just some rich stash. It was sacred. The coins spanned several reigns of Byzantine emperors from the 4th to the 7th centuries, and are believed to have been buried around 614 CE, during the Persian conquest of Jerusalem. What puzzled experts was how casually the treasure had been hidden. There was no strong box, depth, or serious protection. It seemed like the owner had rushed to hide it, but never returned. The medallion alone gave the find religious significance. This wasn't just about gold, it was about faith, loss, and survival, during one of the darkest periods in the city's history. The Opal project has been generously underwritten since 2009 by Daniel Mintz and Meredith Berkman from New York. The entire project includes the archaeological excavations, the processing of the finds towards publication, as well as the preservation and preparation of the site for its opening to the public. Number 9. Ferrari Dino found buried in a yard. A stolen Ferrari isn't something you expect to dig up while gardening, but in 1978, a Dino 246 GTS was unearthed in a Los Angeles backyard, wrapped in plastic, rusted, and half swallowed by the earth. The car had originally been purchased in 1974, only to be reported stolen just 2 months later. Then, radio silence, until kids playing in the yard stumbled on part of its roof. When police investigated, they realized someone had actually buried the car and tried to preserve it, as if planning to come back. Who buried it? No answers. Why was it wrapped up like some mafia mystery? Still unclear, but the car was real, the VIN matched, and so did the story. Years later, the cleaned-up Dino was auctioned and restored into a showpiece. It's one of those stories that feels like fiction until you see the mud-caked windshield for yourself. No fairy tale here, just a Ferrari rising out of the dirt, forgotten by time. Alright guys, now let's move to number 8. Anglo Saxon coins in a British field. A couple out metal detecting in Somerset, UK, weren't expecting anything more than a fun afternoon, but their scanners lit up, and so did their lives. Buried beneath an average-looking field was a hoard of rare silver pennies from the reigns of King Harold II and William the Conqueror. The find dates all the way back to the years surrounding the 1066 Norman invasion, a turning point in British history. Once recovered, the hoard had to be verified by experts from the British Museum, triggering legal steps to determine ownership and value. In the UK, treasure finds like this involve splitting profits with the landowner and the government. But still, the couple walked away with a hefty payday. The silver coins were real, historical currency, each one a physical snapshot of medieval power struggles. For 2 people just poking around in a field, It turned into the kind of find you don't get twice. History and cash, well, it's a solid combo. Number 7. Forgotten motorcycles linked to Lawrence of Arabia. Well, this one is super incredible. In a dusty barn in Cornwall, a collection of old motorcycles sat motionless for decades. Among them were several Bras Superiors, machines famously associated with T.E. Lawrence, also known as Lawrence of Arabia. These weren't just random bikes, they were the same model Lawrence had once ridden, and one of them, George V., was involved in the crash that claimed his life. Over time, rumors had swirled about a stash of these rare bikes hidden away, but no one really believed it. Then someone opened the right door. The machines had sat untouched for over 50 years, covered in cobwebs, still wearing the weight of their era. They weren't restored or showcased, they were left exactly as they'd last been parked. The rediscovery wasn't just about vintage bikes. It was about uncovering a lost piece of history tied to a man who shaped empires and rebelled against them. Silent engines, frozen time, and stories that never stopped roaring, even when the wheels did. Number 6. Baldini masterpiece found in time-locked apartment. In Paris, an untouched apartment sat frozen in time for over 70 years. It belonged to Madame de Florian, who fled the city in 1939 as war closed in and never returned. She continued to pay rent, but the apartment was never reopened, not until her death decades later. When her heirs finally entered the space, it was like stepping into a sealed memory. The furniture, the letters, the scent of age, it all remained. And among it was something no one expected, an unsigned oil painting that turned out to be the work of Giovanni Baldini, a prominent Italian portrait artist from the Belle Epoque. The woman in the painting, Madame de Florian's grandmother. Love letters nearby confirmed the relationship between her and the artist. The portrait caused a frenzy in the art world and sold at auction for over $3 million. One locked door kept history intact, untouched by time or chaos, holding a masterpiece the world had forgotten until it didn't. Number 5. Ritual artifacts below Chishen Itsa. Underneath the iconic ruins of Chishen Itsa lies something far older than just stone steps and ancient walls. In a cave system known as Balamku, archaeologists uncovered a massive collection of ritual Mayan objects, untouched and sealed off from the world for over 1,000 years. The site included ceremonial bowls, incense burners, and symbolic figurines. Many showed signs of fire damage, proving they'd been used in religious offerings. These weren't random artifacts, they were sacred tools placed intentionally in the cave as part of spiritual ceremonies. Unlike looted temples or sun-baked altars, everything here was left undisturbed. That kind of preservation is rare. Experts believe even Mayan priests were told not to enter the space once the rituals were complete. Finding it now, completely intact, is like unlocking a chapter of Mayan life that was never meant to be reopened. No gold, no jewels, just proof that belief, not wealth, held the most power in this lost world. Alright guys, now let's head over to number 4. Bronze Age sword that shines like new. During excavations near Nördlingen in Germany, archaeologists unearthed a 3,000-year-old sword in a Bronze Age grave. But the real surprise wasn't the find, it was the condition. Despite being buried for millennia, the blade was so well preserved that it gleamed in the sunlight, looking almost new. Experts were completely stunned. The burial site held 3 individuals, but the sword stood out as the highlight: bronze, complete with a solid octagonal hilt and expert craftsmanship. How it managed to avoid corrosion, collapse, or wear remains a mystery. What's clear is that whoever owned it wasn't average. This was a ceremonial or elite thing, something built to last and buried with purpose. It challenged assumptions about what kind of technology existed in Bronze Age Europe. Not all ancient weapons crumble to dust. Some survive in silence, waiting for the right hand to dig them out and hold them to the light again. No dramatics, no legends, just cold, real history sharpened by time. What do you think about it? Let us know. Number 3. Hidden Attic Discovery by David Whitcomb. In December 2020, David Whitcomb bought a historic building in Geneva, New York, intending to turn the lower floors into his law office. He knew the third floor needed a full gut renovation. It hadn't been lived in for over 30 years. But while changing a light bulb with a friend, they spotted floorboards through a hole in the ceiling. What wasn't in the paperwork or visible during purchase turned out to be an attic, completely hidden, totally untouched. Inside was a full photography studio packed with antique equipment, glass negatives and prints. Whitcomb soon found paperwork confirming that the studio once belonged to James Hale, the same man who shot the iconic portrait of Susan B. Anthony, now housed in the Library of Congress. Even the original print was up there. Photography experts came to examine the early gear, and ash from a neighboring building fire in the 1980s still coated everything. Whitcomb plans to auction much of it off once the layers of forgotten history have been carefully cleaned and identified. Number 2. Doorstop turns out to be a historic sculpture. That lump of stone keeping a shed door open wasn't just heavy, it was valuable. A property owner in France had been using it for years without realizing he was casually propping open the door with a sculpture by 18th century neoclassical artist Edmé Bouchardon. He had no clue the carved piece was an authentic work by one of France's most famous sculptors. Bouchardon's work can be found in museums around the world, often praised for its balance of realism and elegance. This particular piece, once dismissed as just a weird old stone, ended up being worth a fortune. It was eventually authenticated and recognized for what it was, a forgotten remnant of Rococo brilliance wrongly demoted to yard duty. No grand reveal, no secret stash, just a man using a piece of fine art as a door wedge. It's the kind of find that reminds people how close history can sit to everyday life, without any spotlight, museum glass, or velvet rope to show it off. Number 1. Gold hoard hidden in a piano. At a regular school in Shropshire, England, a worn upright piano was donated with zero fanfare. That changed fast. A technician tuning it found something no one expected: over 9,000 gold sovereigns stashed beneath the keys. They were bundled neatly in 7 cloth pouches and 1 leather purse, all wedged deep under the keyboard. The coins date back to the Victorian era. No one had any clue how they got there. The couple who donated the piano had owned it for more than 3 decades, but never imagined it was harboring a fortune. With no trace of the original owner, British treasure laws kicked in. The technician, thanks to pure luck, was awarded a sizable sum after the coins were declared a treasure trove. The mystery is still unsolved. Nobody knows who hid them or why. But whoever did it clearly meant to come back. They just never did. Turns out sometimes even a piano's got better savings than your bank. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.